Joining us now with his reaction, Bernstein U.S. Internet Managing Director Mark Shmulik. Good to see you, Mark. So what was the impact of Sheryl Sandberg on Facebook Meta as we know it?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The impact is immeasurable. I think as you justly described, they grew it from a startup to a real business, driving the revenue growth engine to the point where there's north of 10 million advertisers, 200 million businesses participating in the Facebook ecosystem. So she's certainly been a pillar and one of the two leaders there alongside Mark that effectively have built this company into the behemoth it is today.
Mark, without Sheryl Sandberg in the day-to-day operations, I guess, is that changing your view, your outlook on Facebook at all?
No, not materially, and it's one we're still digesting as kind of the news breaks and we see what the new leadership structure looks like. I think it is fair to say that she's slowly started to step back from activities. I believe she was on sabbatical actually a little bit earlier this year. And so I think as Facebook kind of enters into its next wave of growth, the Javier taking over, certainly fits the mandate of effectively where Facebook or now Meta, which is changing its ticker symbol next week, goes from here. And it's really more about an integration, of effectively their core applications alongside Reality Labs. And that's kind of really Javier's strength is this kind of cross-platform integrations. And so, I think this is really just about what the next wave of growth is, both for the company, and so it kind of feels like an opportune time. If Sheryl was to step away, this feels like, the time to do it.
Mark, I want to ask you, do you think she's leaving because they're transitioning to Meta, that they're no longer going to be the Facebook that it was, that she came on and helped, essentially build out from what it was? Is that why she's leaving, do you think?
It's hard to speculate on why. Certainly I think a lot of her strength has really been about building up the businesses, the ad business. And, as we look ahead to where growth comes from, certainly there's more to do there, as they look to monetize Reels. But, a lot of the chatter and a lot of the ambitions about, Meta are certainly now broader, going into Reality Labs in the metaverse, going into e-commerce and shopping, going into the business messaging, which they had their conference, just a couple weeks ago. And so as we expand kind of beyond that core business built today, it certainly feels like, if she kind of feels like she accomplished, her job of building it up to the business it is, I think you could say mission accomplished, and then time for somebody else to step in to grow into those other, ambitious initiatives.
Yeah, you can't help but wonder if she's not necessarily all in on the future of the metaverse. It certainly leads one to believe. Looking at the stock, the markets have judged not a huge impact, down 2% on the day. This news did break before the closing bell, and after hours, shares are flat. So is the market saying no real impact on the future of the stock price?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, certainly the stock has been hammered, this year alongside the rest of tech, but certainly even a little bit more so, given what happened on the February earnings call. And I think it reflects just the nature of, where she is today and where the business is today. And the ad business effectively functions at this point at scale. And so if we look ahead to kind of what's next, perhaps the best analogy I can draw, and it's certainly not the CEO seat, reminds me a little bit of, Sundar Pichai kind of taking over Google. Feels a little bit of, Javier now stepping into that role to take the company, to its next wave of growth. And I think that's starting to be reflected a little bit into the company, because certainly I think a lot of her largest impact was earlier on, and her role is kind of, as I mentioned, she's been stepping back a little bit more recently, which makes it more of a softer landing here.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comparison there. Mark, when we take a look at the share price and the performance that we've seen in Facebook since the beginning of the year, obviously with the sell-off that we've seen in tech, they are far from the only stock that has been hammered. But from your perspective as someone who closely watches Meta day in and day out, what do you think they should do, or what do they need to do in order to kind of turn around that perception right now and convince Wall Street, convince investors that this is the way to go?
I think the answer is going to be in the fundamentals. And I think it just speaks to the markets we're in today, where it's not just about top line growth, but it's about delivering, earnings and returning capital to shareholders. And so, we're now going to enter a period where certainly the second half looks a little bit more appealing than the first half, as we start lapping some of the headwinds tied to IDFA, and we start seeing Reels monetization ramp up. And certainly if they could show investors monetization progress on any of these other initiatives, I've always referred to these, internet businesses as they've got great cash cows, and that's what Facebook has, or Meta has. They have an advertising cash cow. What they need to start showing investors is the ability to generate revenue and to drive profitable growth, in other things like, Facebook Shops, things like business messaging, and certainly Reality Labs. And so perhaps this is a moment of transition where, we as investors will be able to watch and see progress against some of those other initiatives.
Is Javier the person for that?
It's hard for me to say. Certainly I think the role that he held in the company was really one about, driving some of those cross-platform initiatives. And I think in Mark Zuckerberg's kind of Facebook post, he kind of mentioned the path forward is really about closer integration across these applications. That's effectively the role that he's functioned in, is, trying to drive collaboration across, Instagram, Facebook Blue, Messenger, and WhatsApp. And so certainly at least the skill set is there to drive kind of that collaboration efforts going forward. And so at least, from my seat, feels like a natural fit for at least the way Mark has described the role and what he wants from it.